All right, we ready to wing this shit?
Always.
One day we'll get organized.
One day
One day we'll be organized.
That day is not today.
It's not today, and it won't be next week. And in 3, 2, do you want to look up? Because we're actually on camera this time. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our 3 favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. E and the Tall Guy, welcome back, Tall Guy, are back with you with another episode. And Edison, out of Southern California, is joining us again, back-to-back episodes. Welcome back, Edison.
Thanks for having me. Back-to-back episodes. I guess that means I'm doing something right, even though my predictions weren't right. But, you know, hey, I guess I'll take something over nothing. Yeah,
we butchered those. If anyone listened to the last week's podcast, don't take anything we say to Vegas. Just don't. It's not a good idea. Also,
it's really not. It's really not. The only time I've been in Vegas, me and my old roommate, we threw down a bet on Virginia against. No, we threw down a bet on Purdue against Virginia, March Madness, and Purdue went up. It was that game with Kyle Guy and who's on the Celtics now, Carson Edwards. And we threw down a bet. We're like, hey, and I was like, they're up 9. This game's over. Virginia comes back and wins in overtime. So don't take anything I say to Vegas. Just for your own good.
No better advertisement for our podcast than saying, don't listen to a word we say. Just don't. It's a waste of time. But Ed, if you keep joining us, we're going to have to get you a nickname at some point. Everyone on the podcast has a nickname. So anyone listening and knows Edison, comment a nickname on our next social media. Anything that you want Edison to be called. We're outsourcing your nickname here, man.
Okay, sounds good.
Outsourcing. You know, it's nice. I feel like I'm the guest right now. You guys are the recurring guys, and I'm just the one that gets to show up. It's kind of nice.
Oh,
all the pressure's off now.
Well, we've got a jam-packed podcast for you today. We say it every time, but a lot has happened in the NBA since we've last joined you a week ago. Unfortunately, we've got some unfortunate business to unpack today, which is something that is a hot topic in the NBA right now, which is injuries. And they have taken their toll on star players, role player. Every player is dealing with injuries almost every season, but star players this year have really been hit with the injury bug, and we'll break that down a little bit, especially in the playoffs this podcast.
Yeah, it's one of the unfortunate truths of watching sports, and especially this post-COVID season, that has been one of the biggest narratives. And so we're just going to dive into that and talk about all this stuff and how it's been affecting the playoffs and who our potential champion is going to be. But before we get into all of that,
I miss those words.
I got to witness it live.
Before we do, finger in the air and everything.
Koozies are coming, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
We're working on it.
We have found a potential distributor. Koozies are in the works.
So
if anyone's a graphic designer, let me know, because we need some need some help in that department to get these koozies done. But yes,
I'm very excited. I'm gonna have like a koozie for every single podcast going forward. It's gonna be my thing. But tonight, the fellas, we are drinking margaritas.
Good old fashioned Margs.
Good old fashioned margaritas.
That's right. The only thing I will drink with tequila.
That is fair. I actually have started drinking tequila like by itself with lime. Just like a little like squirt of lime.
You chose violence.
Yeah, couldn't be me.
Woke up.
Could not be me.
Violence. That is not okay.
My roommate's been getting really good tequila, and I don't have a lot of mixers for tequila. So like I'm not gonna put Coke in tequila or whatever. So I was like, oh, I got limes. Let me put a little lime in it, and it's not that bad when you have the good stuff.
I guess that's a fair point.
I have no words. I have no words.
The old Coke and tequila.
But yes, Mitch out here not drinking tequila and lime, because who does that? I will say, my girlfriend drinks tequila on the rocks.
Yeah,
and that is just wild to me. I don't understand it. This is the only, like Edison, this is kind of the only thing I can muster down with tequila in it. Maybe if I'm feeling dangerous, a tequila sunrise or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'll make an exception for that.
And then
too.
if we're going for, something other than taste, I will be searching for tequila shots. If I'm drinking for something other than taste.
Ranch waters are pretty popular these days. Those got tequila.
Those don't do it for me. They don't.
They don't do
really
it for you.
Don't.
They're very popular. I
want to. Don't get me wrong.
popular.
I want them.
Did you say ranch water?
Yeah. Oh, I forget you're not from Texas.
See, like
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, in the South, they become super popular. And there's kind of like two versions of it. One is like a seltzer that you can just buy from 7-Eleven. And then the other is like actually a tequila mixed drink.
It's like tequila and like soda water. Think of like a White Claw, but with tequila.
Oh, okay.
They're dangerous.
They're
sounds
very
like
dangerous.
it.
Anyways, off topic already. What is a margarita? Why are we drinking this?
All right, so margaritas, obviously, like some of the most favorite drinks around the world. Here's the history that goes behind it, and this comes from wineenthusiast.com. So
super reputable when it comes to margaritas.
So surely they know what they're talking about when it comes to margaritas.
Take what we say and take it to Vegas, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, bet on it.
Like the NBA Finals foretold by a Clippers fan.
Yeah. Hey, I guessed on the Bucks, which with the honest news is
margaritas.
Margaritas.
Get into margaritas.
Sorry. We've had a long day of drinking getting into this, so here we go. All right, God. So one story claims that the drink was created in 1938 as Mexican restaurant owner Carlos Danny Herrera mixed it for gorgeous Zyfield showgirl Marjorie King. Supposedly, tequila was the only alcohol that King would abide by, and then he added lime juice and salt. Other claims is that Texas socialite Margaret Sames, aka Margarita, mixed the first drink at a house party in Mexico during 1948, or maybe was named for the actress Rita Hayworth, whose real name was Margarita Casino, during a gig in Tijuana. In this book, in some guy's book, Imbibe, cocktail historian David Wunrich agrees that the margarita was invented during the above time frame. He says that the drink evolved from the Daisy, which is like its own drink, a classic cocktail popular at the time that mixed alcohol, citrus juice, grenadine, and served over ice. And it kind of like, he keeps talking about how it eventually turned from that, and then they, instead of putting like the grenadine, they then started putting orange liqueur in it, and then after the orange liqueur, then they started putting the lime juice and agave in it. And it's actually one of the first restaurants that ever did the mixed or the blended margarita, like a frozen margarita, was in Dallas.
I love that. I'm actually kind of surprised.
We are.
I'm actually kind of surprised. That's a lot newer than I thought it would be. Mm-hmm. I would think the margarita would be a lot older than
goes way back. But
like,
no.
Yeah, I thought it would go like way back. But 1900 seems relatively new to me.
Yeah, kind of like 1930s and on too.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, it feels like one of those things that's just like stood the test of time or been as old as time, whatever the saying is.
Right.
But
well, and
that is interesting.
I mean, tequila is hard enough to drink on its own. I would think that people have been trying to mask that for longer than, 90 years. I feel like we're smarter than this, people.
No, like, they were just going hard in Mexico before.
Humanity, stop drinking tequila without sugar of some kind in there. What are we doing?
Gotta have the sugar. Sugar's a must.
I mean, you gotta cut the gasoline taste.
I mean, okay, I will say that if you're paying like high-end tequila can be really good. And that's why people are starting to like sip it a little bit more.
Love margaritas.
We're going to bring tequila in more often.
Oh my God.
Just to kill you.
Oh my God. I'm just
I'll be busy those days. So
I'm just wrapping my mind around whiskey. I am just now getting around whiskey. We're going to throw another thing in. Speaking of injuries, like me being injured of drinking too much tequila, injuries have been taking over, the NBA as of late. And it's really unfortunate how much this, especially the postseason, has really been impacted by injuries. You could pick any team in the NBA and one of their stars has been kind of injured at some point. It's kind of wild. I mean, you had the Lakers, Edison's Lakers, definitely ruined by injury. The Nuggets, Jamal Murray, Kawhi Leonard, the list goes on and on and on. Giannis Antetokounmpo, we were recording this Tuesday night right after the Hawks Bucks game, a game where Giannis went out with injury, a hyperextended knee, did not return to the game. Trae Young was out with a bone bruise. Both stars did not play tonight. I mean, you've had all sorts of injuries throughout the entire playoffs. Just completely. Embiid's been hobbled. Like just a ton of players. Jaylen Brown out the entire playoffs. The Nets situation. Every single team has dealt with injuries this year, and it's more so than any NBA season I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. And I would argue that it might be the most injury-riddled season of all time.
Yeah.
Hey, a seamless transition there, Ethan. Seamless transition. I would, say that's probably pretty right on point. It's almost like giving guys 76 days of an off season was a bad idea. Like, wow, who foresaw that coming? All these soft tissue injuries that we've seen with Kyrie, with Anthony Davis, with Jamal Murray, like all these things are because of fatigue. Like, yeah, I mean, of course, these are world-class athletes. They take care of their bodies. I mean, I'm pretty sure LeBron James has been on record saying he spends over $1 million a year just keeping his body in shape. But I mean, it's asking a lot of these guys, even though they are world-class athletes. It's asking a lot of them to end a season, take 76 days off, and then pick right back up at 100%, 76 days later. And it's asking a lot. And anybody who knows like how these soft injury issues and injuries work would not be surprised by this at all.
Yeah. And it's definitely a combination of the short off season and it's all those soft tissue injuries like you're talking about. Like when people are tearing their ACLs and like messing up their knees and stuff like that, it's horrible. But then we've also had a lot of those just crazy fluke injuries like Giannis tonight, just hyperextending his knee. And it's just been a bad combination of the wear and tear throughout the regular season. And then also just a lot of bad luck for a lot of really strong guys who typically can go through an entire season without getting hurt. You see everyone is kind of going down this year, and it really sucks because it's creating this narrative now for the playoffs that it doesn't really feel like it's the best team that's winning the championship, but it's the most healthy team that's winning the championship, which I think sucks because whoever ends up winning is going to kind of get that like a little bit of an asterisk next to their name.
Yeah, I would agree. Like it's definitely every team has dealt with injury, like I said, but it has definitely come down to the healthiest team versus the most talented team because, and you can argue the two most talented teams in the NBA this year, the Lakers and the Nets would arguably the favorites going in, the most talented teams are out. And it's because of injury. I mean, you have a ton of different players being hurt, but like those two teams heavily impacted. The Nuggets, being bounced in the second round because of injury. I mean, if they have Jamal Murray, I think they go farther. I think everyone thinks they go farther. I mean, the Kawhi went with the Clippers. The Clippers are fighting hard right now against the Suns, but if they have Kawhi, I don't know if this is much of a series. I mean, Chris Paul being in and out with injury, missing a couple of games. You have, the Nets just absolutely being decimated. It's very sad to see that it's come down to who is the most healthy to end the year. I'm going to pose a question to you guys. Which team do you think has been most affected by injuries so far this year? I'll let Edison start. And why do you think that is?
I mean, that's a tough question. You can look at that in a lot of different ways in, amount of time missed or key players missed, like, or who missed when. And I know I'm going to sound like a homer, but I mean, I gotta say the Lakers. That's just what I feel. That's just what I feel. I mean, I watched some of these games. Man, and I'm just like, a healthy Lakers team just runs through these playoffs. Like they just do. It's hard to say when I think that the Lakers had the most value taken from them by injuries, missing Anthony Davis for an extended stretch and again in the playoffs, missing LeBron for a longer stretch in his career than he's ever missed. And with some of that time being overlapped. And, before they got hurt, they were cruising towards the top of the standings. And then all of a sudden, Braun goes down, AD goes down again, and we're in the play-in all of a sudden. Like we go from fighting for a 1 seed to let's just not be the 8th seed. Like let's at least have home court in the play-in game, right? So it's hard to say. I don't think we definitely haven't had the most injuries. But if we're going to go ahead and talk about the most value taken by injuries, I think you'll be hard pressed to find a team other than the Lakers that lost more value due to injuries this year.
I think that that's totally fair. The Lakers started off the season where everyone kind of just assumed that they were going to win the championship, or if anyone was going to challenge them, it was going to be those Brooklyn Nets. And then all of a sudden the Lakers go down with some injuries and they're just sliding down the rankings. And
they look pedestrian.
Yeah.
So you can say it how it is. I know you want to. You're a Blazers fan. They look pedestrian.
Yeah, they looked like a normal team. It wasn't the same Lakers that you were fearing going into the playoffs last year in the bubble.
I mean, teams were like tanking to avoid the Lakers.
Yeah.
I mean,
which I thought was hilarious, by the way.
I mean,
that's
teams
another
were
story.
tanking to avoid the Lakers, and just not be on their side of the bracket, aka the Clippers. I mean, the Nuggets did it a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Multiple teams just trying to avoid them. And I mean, they had every right to. The Lakers are scary, but without LeBron, I mean, they're basically, the 17 Pelicans.
They really are.
Yeah. And then without AD, they're basically the 2019 Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I still think that the Lakers had a better roster than what you guys showed at the end of the season. Like, you kind of just started falling apart at the seams a little bit. But I'm gonna go ahead and say the other team that's really easy to mention, which is the Brooklyn Nets. And that is like they still ended up as a 2 seed. They still ended up going to the second round, and they still pushed the Bucks and almost won that series, right? Well, we didn't ever really see more than, I think, 8 games of all 3 of the guys playing together at the same time. So we have no idea what that team actually looks like when you have Harden, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant all on the squad, all on the floor at the exact same time. And maybe that's an all-time team. Like, maybe that's a team that almost nobody can beat, and it's impossible to tell. And it sucks to go through this, but I also would pose the argument that every season it's arguably who is the healthiest team down the stretch. Because even go back to like when the Toronto Raptors won, they probably don't win if Kevin Durant isn't hurt or if Klay Thompson isn't hurt. Like a lot of the series like when LeBron James lost to the Warriors several times, it was because either Kyrie or Kevin Love was going down. A lot of the time when it gets down to the nitty gritty in the finals, it's a lot because who is still healthy, who still has their stars.
Yeah,
that's completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that a little bit, but I mean, I don't think we've seen a league-wide injury bug like we've seen this year. I mean, again, like I said earlier, every team you can look, and if it's not their best player, it's their second best player has at least missed some significant amount of time. I mean, your Portland Trailblazers prime example, CJ and Nurk both dealing with heavy injuries. My Mavs, KP being in and out of the lineup and also just, being a bitch. But a ton of other teams just really, really struggling with the injury bug. I mean, I'm going to say a team that's, in my opinion, the team that's been most hurt by the injury bug, a team that's still in it, the team that knocked the Mavs out, the Clippers. I mean, if they have Kawhi Leonard, they're probably the title favorites at this point. And yes, they're hanging in there without Kawhi, but if they have Kawhi Leonard, I'm picking them against anybody. I know a lot of people had them winning the whole thing before Kawhi got hurt, and they're still alive. But I mean, you're taking a top 5 at least player off the court. I mean, for like an injury that they're being kind of weird about, right? They haven't said it's a torn ACL. They've said it's an ACL sprain, which is code for they're either hiding it or they don't know, right?
Yeah.
But it's just having him not on the floor has brought the best out of playoff P, but it has not brought the best out of the Clippers, right? Playoff P has played a lot better, but the Clippers are at their best when they have the claw.
When they have both of them on the floor. Yeah, I
right?
think that's a completely fair statement to make. I do think that, like you said, playoff P has kind of avenged. I don't think he's completely avenged anything just yet, but with that being said, all of the, layoff P, way off P, pandemic P, like anything you want to throw out there. I mean, you can't deny the fact that he has been playing to the level that people expected him to be playing when he first signed with the Clippers. I mean, he's now like, I don't necessarily see anything different in his game because I feel like he was playing this way in the bubble. Those shots just weren't falling. You know what I mean? Like he was still taking them. It wasn't like he ever like stopped hucking up shots, like it's not like what I saw he ever lost confidence. I mean, sure, he probably did, but he was still, getting to his spots, taking his shots, everything that he wanted. Now they're falling, right? And it's exactly when the Clippers need them to be falling, when they're without, his Batman, right? Because I don't think anybody's going to say that he is Batman to Kawhi's Robin, right? But now that Batman's out, Robin's got to step up, and he did, and he has been, and he's been playing well. But like Ethan said, if they also have Kawhi Leonard, it's hard to imagine a team with especially Kawhi Leonard also playing like back to the level that people were expecting of him. They both have had a resurgence this year, and it would be tough to see them going out if both of them were healthy. I think that's a completely fair statement to make.
Yeah, and going off on Paul George's game, I mean, last night was incredible. Just a short tangent here. I mean, 41 points, a career high, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, just like crazy good numbers. I mean, played super well. Some guys
on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, as you said, very good defense. Some guys just thrive in being in that number one role. And I think Paul George might be one of those guys where he just thrives in the team needing to rely on him. And some guys just struggle being a number two, just like some guys struggle being like the number one option and just need a Batman to their Robin. Some guys just personally play better when the offense is running through them and when the ball's in their hands most of the time.
It's almost less pressure. Like when you're a guy like Paul George and you're used to being all those years with the Pacers, like he's the guy. And it's like, he's expected to go out and be the guy, but all of a sudden when you're the number two option, it's like, you have to hit your shots and you're hitting your shots off of someone else as opposed to like going in and like getting to your spots. And like you were saying, like Paul George last year was still doing the same thing he's kind of doing this year. He's just, it's just sometimes it actually is more pressure being the number two guy because you have to play well next to him. Like you got to hit your open shots or else it looks worse, right? When you're the number one guy and you're taking these really hard shots and they don't go in, you're like, it's okay. You're still our guy. Like keep putting them up. And I think that you're seeing that a little bit with Paul George now without Kawhi Leonard. To me, he's just such an enigma where his good looks amazing. Like when he's at his best, like he is arguably the MVP of the league. Like we saw him be the number one MVP candidate when he was with the Thunder. And then when his bad is really, really bad, it's him hitting the side of backboards. It's him missing crunch time free throws. It's him throwing like inbounding the ball off the back of like Zubac and almost losing it down the stretch. Is like when he's horrible, it's like, or when he's bad, it just looks really, really bad. But then when he's amazing, he makes some of the craziest shots I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Let's get back into injuries because
I was gonna say on that injury trend, I was gonna say one other team. I'll say if we're gonna kind of deviate from the norm here, that I think would have an argument for most like injured would be a team we never got to see fully healthy. In that being the Golden State Warriors.
Very good point. Very good point.
I mean, at least with those other teams that we mentioned, right? I mean, even though Brooklyn was only like 8 games. The Lakers played most of their season fully healthy, or at least the first half of their season, and then kind of limped into the playoffs. The Clippers, kind of the same story, healthy most of the season. Now a big injury hits, and it's a problem. In the case of the Warriors, Klay Thompson went down before the season even started, right? And it turned into Stephen Curry, like everybody always calls the Warriors the Stephen Curry show. Well, they quite literally were the Stephen Curry show. They went as far as he took them, right? And it just goes to show that like basketball is a team game. You need more than just one guy. I mean, it's hard. Anybody. I mean, you need at least a Robin to help get you in those, crucial moments to pick you up when you're having an off game. When Steph Curry was having an off game, there was no one to pick him up, right? If he was down, the Warriors were down.
Especially once James Wiseman went down as well.
Yeah.
I mean, was he having the greatest rookie season ever?
No.
But he even at least offered them something, right? Something that another player, like something they had to guard, at least something that teams had to kind of game plan around a little bit.
Something they had to respect.
Yes. And once he went down, Steph was on his own, especially once Draymond gave up shooting as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he just gave up any sort of shooting. So yes, I would agree. The Warriors are definitely a team that really, really, really got bit by the injury bug this year. And it kind of leads me to my next question that I want to pose to you guys. What team do you think, looking forward into next year, like let's put the playoffs on the back burner for half a second here, looking forward into next year, is most excited to get their players back? Like, what team are the fans are just like, all right, well, when we get our guys back next year, it's on. Like, we've got our team now we're good to go.
Yeah.
I'll give it to Mitch this time.
I was going to say, Mitch, you want to go first this time? Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to keep going on with the Warriors thing. Like I feel like they've been talking about it for a while with the Klay Thompson thing for the last 2 years. It's like, hey, like once we're back, once we're healthy, you better watch out because we're still the Warriors.
Right.
Like, we're still that team that ran the league for half a decade. And once they do finally get Klay Thompson back, then maybe they do go back to being that team. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're actually past their prime and it's just not going to look the same thing without the other pieces, the Harrison Barnes, Kevin Durant, Sean Livingston's, the other guys that built that team. Yeah, the Iguodala's that actually were like a major pieces to that team. And maybe they do go back to being amazing top 2-3 seed and having a chance at a championship. I think that the Klay Thompson thing is probably one of the biggest adds for a team because, like you said, we don't know what they actually look like yet.
Yeah, and kind of going off that for a quick second. I mean, that's a team that going to Edison and I talked about last podcast. They have 2 lottery picks, right? That is just very, very, very important. Are we good?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly just how much that would have changed their entire season. And I do think that those 2 lottery picks are going to be big, but all of this to say, I think that it just shows that Klay Thompson and his value, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, were criminally underrated when talking about Warriors teams of the past. I mean, everybody like, oh, who's the most valuable Warrior to that team? Is it Steph? Is it KD? Like, is it – some people were even saying Draymond over, Klay. And, like, all I'm saying is he is a more valuable cog in that machine than people ever give him credit for.
Yeah, definitely underrated. Ed, what team are you looking at?
The team that I would be looking at is somebody who's kind of in the same boat. And I think you're going to like this answer, although, well, you might disagree with it. But I think it's your Mavs. If you can get KP back to a level of the guy you traded for and not a hobbled version of himself, I mean, him and Luka are as dominant, potentially dominant, as any 1-2 punch you can put out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would, don't get me wrong, I would love to have KP back healthy and, a part of this team and willing to buy in. And this is a whole nother point podcast that we could talk about. I think there are deeper issues in Dallas than just on the court fit that I think.
Well, that's apparent.
Yeah, that they need to address. That being said, if KP can find a way to get back healthy, he is a very good player. I think a top 5 power forward in the NBA. I mean,
you wouldn't have traded for him if not, if that wasn't the case, right? It's
absolutely not.
Like you haven't seen much of that guy that you traded for in your own uniform, right? Like it's been hard to come by. He's just been hurt all the time.
I mean, it's the tale as old as time. Big men with knee injuries.
Yeah.
The Blazers fan here knows.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware.
Big men with knee injuries, they never come back the way you want them to. And it's sad and it's a bummer. And honestly, KP had a career year offensively this year. People don't know that. He averaged career highs in all 3 major categories.
Really?
Yes. But his defensive ability just made him almost unplayable towards the end. And his shot selection and his IQ, not necessarily IQ, but like his basketball awareness just isn't where it needs to be, to where like he takes shots that it's like in the time and place just aren't necessarily like Luka could be rolling, hit 3 threes in a row. Luka will give him the ball for like a pass back to like do a step back, and he'll turn around long two, but he doesn't fade away. He just turns and tries to shoot over. It's a whole thing. I think there's deeper issues in Dallas than just his knees. That being said, I do think his knees are an issue. But yes, if he were to get back to that point, I am very confident in the Mavericks.
As you should be.
Yeah. My team, I would think, and this is another, I guess I'm going with another Western Conference team. I'm going to go with the Nuggets. I think Jamal Murray is the heart and soul. As much as Jokic, the MVP this year, is amazing. Let's not shortchange him. He's amazing, right? Best player in the league this year, MVP. I mean, just generational talent. But Jamal Murray is the grit and grind, heart and soul of that team. And I mean, he is arguably maybe the most important Robin in the NBA right now, because that team became a shell of itself. Yes, they won some games at the end of the regular season, and yes, they pushed the Blazers, or they beat the Blazers. But I mean, without Murray, their whole idea of like, we're going to win a championship vanished, right? Like once he went down, they were like, all right, well, let's see how far we can go without him. It wasn't like, but before that, they were like, we could win the whole thing this year. We can win the whole damn thing. With this roster, with this team, we can win the whole thing. He goes down. It's like, well, season's kind of a wash. Let's see how far we can go without him. And to me, that is a big thing where like, if he comes back and he's healthy, it's like, all right, well, we've got our guy back. Let's go.
I will say that Jamal Murray's value really takes place come playoffs. I think that as long as you have Nikola Jokic on your team, you're going to be a top 5 seed regardless. And when I said this before, but like when Murray went down, I was like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised to see them actually hit an uptick, because I think that Porter really is that good. Like I think could be a potential superstar in the league. And he was definitely showing a lot of that throughout the season. But what you came to saw come playoffs, when the game slows down and you need guys to go get buckets, Porter couldn't really create on his own. And Jokic isn't much of a creator for himself. And that's where Jamal Murray comes in and is such a key aspect to them, is when come playoffs, he is your guy that you kind of rely on in the fourth quarter. Like, please go find us a bucket. Like, please just beat your guy and help us get there. Because Jokic, as amazing as he is more predicated on opening the floor up for other people, where Murray is predicated toward opening the floor up for himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I think that's a good point. I'll make it quick, but
yeah, no, you're good.
I think that's a good point. For all the analytics and for all these statistics heads that are like, oh, 3 points or dunks, like 3-pointers or dunks, like that's it. Like, don't take anything else. Anything else is a bad shot. That might be true of the regular season, but that just goes to show you like how different the playoffs can be. Because if you don't have that guy that can go and get you a bucket from anywhere on the floor, mid-range pull-up, elbow jumper, 3-pointer, attacking the rack, like anything like that, you're not getting very far. And for the Nuggets, like you said, Jamal Murray is that guy. He can go, he can create his own shot from anywhere on the floor. He can get you a bucket when you're in a rut. And that's a very, very valuable and maybe even like I said, analytically underrated part of playoff basketball. If you don't have that, you're not going very far.
All right. So that wraps up our injury talk. Let's revisit these Margs. I know we're not drinking the same Margs. We didn't really go into like what we were going to drink margarita wise. I know you and I, Mitch, are drinking
El Jimador.
Yeah, El Jimador with
generic
Marg mix from Kroger, I believe, or maybe Tom Thumb for those who are in the Texas area and know their I guess their grocery stores. I guess,
if you know your grocery stores, specific margarita mix in every.
It has a black label on it. It's yellow and it's real sweet.
What do you have going on over there?
I was gonna say that was one thing we kind of ran into issue wise of like, oh, let's do a craft beer. Whoa, you don't have California craft beer in Texas? Well, yeah, I don't have Texas craft beer in California. What are you talking about? So yeah, I did not have time to make my own Margs before this, but thankfully Cutwater has these little mixed drinks in cans, and one of them that they do, they're based out of San Diego, is a margarita. So I went to the store, I grabbed it because it was cheaper than buying mixed and tequila, and poured it over a glass of ice that I guess you can hear periodically when I take a sip. So hopefully it's just part of my ASMR trend, I guess,
Yeah, Ed's going to be the ASMR guy. All right, so for those listening that have made it this far in the podcast, first off, hats off to you. You've made it about 35 minutes. Well done. And also, you now know that we are only accepting answers for Edison's nickname when you comment about it, ASMR themed. So ASM-Edison out here needs a nickname.
ASM-Edison.
And we may or may not ASM-Edison.
Oh, goodness.
Might be here. But yes, there is a million different ways to make a margarita. So we can't really break down the taste, but we can kind of break down that the fact that there are so many different ways and the different ways that you can make a margarita. So Mitch, what do you look for in a margarita?
Oof. What do I look for? I want a lot of tequila in it. Is the first thing. If you could just I love a good strong pour at a Mexican restaurant. Like, when you taste it, it's like straight tequila at the bottom. You're just like, oh, thank you. You just know me so well. I will say I'm usually a more on the rocks than a frozen guy.
Okay.
I think the frozen usually it gives me the brain freezes. I don't like those. It hurts. I also like I forget the name of it. I think it's like Tahitian salt or something like that. It's like
Tahine.
It's like the spicy salt.
Yes.
Tahine, gringo.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. The Tahine salt. I always love that on top of my Margs.
Okay.
Also, complete side note. If you don't watch our YouTube, we now have videos. Everyone, we're trying to get more and more videos of us talking versus B-roll and stuff. And we have a good time doing these. And if you watch this, we have all just lean back laughing 2 or 3 times to the point where it's just all right, no one's talking at this point. It's just us laughing. So if you want a good time, listen to us on YouTube because, the video there is funny. At least a little bit. We'll also post it on our socials so you don't
subscribe, ring the bell.
Yeah, I guess that. Yeah. And, see, look, ASMR Edison here, adding value. Yeah.
How do you take yours?
Man, I don't know. I like mine sweet. Because
I'm pretty much the opposite. Yeah, the opposite of
the tequila in mine.
I like flavored. Hide the tequila. Hide the tequila. I don't want to know what's there.
I like mine. Traditionally, it's with orange juice as opposed to Marg mix. It's orange juice, lime juice, and tequila mix.
Orange liqueur.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying in that article. That's how they started.
I personally like that better than the mix type of stuff, but. Doing that yourself is not only expensive, but also really hard to get the measurements right. I'm sure I could find something, but why do that when they have a mix?
They've done it for you.
Yeah. Are you a sugar or salt on the rim guy, Edison?
That was going to be my next question. Since I am typically a flavored margarita kind of guy, I also like it on the rocks. I'd say probably strawberry is one of my favorites. And I think that sugar goes better with strawberry than salt.
And after last week's podcast, Edison and I like the bitchy sweet drinks. We are on brand per usual.
It's one of my favorite drinks of all time is strawberry lemonade. I love the way how sweet it tastes. So if somebody was just like, "Oh, strawberry margarita kind of tastes like strawberry lemonade," first off, no, but it was good enough. So I was like, all right, yeah, sure, why not?
Wait, so it tastes like strawberry lemonade and it gets you drunk?
Except
where do I sign?
Doesn't.
Where do I sign? I've got my $1 million idea.
No one ever thought of this one. Are you a salt or sugar guy?
I'm a salt guy. I like salty stuff over sugary stuff.
Nice.
I like that better. Are you waiting for me to ask you? Are you a salt?
No, I already said I'm a tahine guy.
Oh, you're a tahine.
I'm a tahine guy. If I had to choose, I'm actually usually choosing sugar.
You're so sweet.
I am.
Boom roasted.
Sweet like sugar.
There you go.
Did you just kiss?
I kissed the mic.
Edison. The wheels are off already,
Oh,
ladies and
goodness.
gentlemen. Again, if you've made it this far, the wheels are off.
And when that happens, we're just
ASMR Edison at his finest. The Team Morale podcast. The wheels are off already. All right, let's get back on track here. Let's break down. We are about halfway through both of these Western Conference finals, and I think we would be amiss about not at least kind of breaking them down, at least briefly. Let's first start with the West, because the East played tonight, and we'll end on that. Let's first start with the West. After the Clippers, they are a cockroach, and they cannot die.
They refuse.
I have a saying.
They're annoying like a cockroach. I can tell you that much.
I have a saying when I'm in a situation where, you're playing a game and you're just like delaying the inevitable. And I always say, I am a cockroach. I cannot die. And the Clippers are embodying that saying right now. They are just fighting, and hats off to them. I mean, Ty Lue's doing a great job coaching. Playoff P is back. And you've got to tip your hat to the role players. Patrick Beverley playing very well. Reggie Jackson
balling,
about to get himself the
Reggie Jackson is going to get the max from someone. I don't know who, but he's going to get a max contract just because of this playoffs.
He's doing the exact same thing he did with the Thunder when he balled out for the Thunder, and then the Pistons are like, oh, he's a max guy. Can't wait to see which team just gives him the max next. It'll be the Magic or something like that.
I saw a stat on the broadcast last night where he has in, couple hundred regular season games, he has 7 20-point per games. So he scored 20 points or more 7 times in the entire regular season part of his career. In 18 playoff games, he scored 20 points per game 9 times. So in half of his playoff games, he scored 20 points, and he's only scored 20 points per game 7 times in his entire regular season career.
Big time player.
That is wild.
He waits for the show.
That's a guy who knows how to get paid. Yeah, that is a guy who sees an opening and is like, you know what? I can make money off of this.
I was going to say, we'll have to start calling him Mr. June. I was going to say, wasn't the other Reggie Jackson Mr. October? Something like that, right?
I love that.
So right.
Mr. June.
Yes, absolutely. But yes, Reggie Jackson playing very well. I mean, the Clippers, to break down the series a little bit more, the Suns are still up 3-2, but the Clippers are not going away. And a big win in Phoenix just last night signifies the way this Clippers team is resilient.
How classic Chris Paul would it be if they lost?
Oh my God.
It's just that is just the story of that guy's career. I'm rooting for the Suns. Obviously, Clippers are kind of
I am guy. Too.
Yeah. Clippers are kind of a natural bad guy, even though I did pick the Clippers to go to the finals. So for pride's sake, I'd be okay with them getting to the finals. But everyone's rooting for the Suns. But how classic Chris Paul, just the story of his career if he ended up losing, being up 3-1 again.
I mean, that would just be brutal. That would just.
Well, I mean, I believe it was Mark Stein who said that when they were at their, either it was a post game of Game 5 or just some of the shoot around availability, some people started talking about the NBA Finals with them up 3-1 to Chris Paul, and Chris Paul was having absolutely none of it. He was NBA Finals, we're not in the NBA Finals yet. What are we talking about the NBA Finals for? Whatever. Da, da, da. And he kind of was a little tongue in cheek about it. He's like, well, was it for just a mentality's sake, or maybe does he know the story of his career a little bit and this and that? And it absolutely would be classic Chris Paul, if they found a way to eventually lose this series. I think that if Scott Foster refs one of these next 2 games, you're going to get at least 7. I mean, it's, we went on and on about this on the last pod. I don't think we need to
heard that horse. You guys went on a whole Scott Foster rant last time.
We're not Scott Foster people here on the team.
We're not going to beat a
get
dead
the hell
horse.
Out. You're not a Team Morale guy.
His children aren't Scott Foster people.
They shouldn't be.
Oh, man. So, I mean, anything is possible. That being said, like Mitch, I too am rooting for the Suns. But whoever comes out of the East, I want them to beat the Suns, just because I don't want to see them win. I mean, there are rivals too, but not as much as the Clippers. And I would much rather prefer being able to say that the Clippers have still not made an NBA Finals in their franchise history, So lesser of two evils at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the Suns are in a position. I mean, they're still in the driver's seat, right? They still just need to win one game, and they need to muster up the ability to win one game. Chris Paul is playing at a career level, right? I mean, so I would still pick them to win it. I mean, but you can't count out the Clippers in the way that like they're not officially ruling Kawhi out either. Like the way the weird NBA season has gone so far, I could see like randomly one day Kawhi's like, you know what, I'm gonna play, and next thing you know, Kawhi's on the court, and you're like, well, shit, now I've got the Clippers winning the whole damn thing.
It's interesting though, because I don't know, just now based on my own scarred like NBA viewership. I don't know if they did list him as available, if it would be anything other than a decoy. I mean, exactly kind of like what we did with Anthony Davis, like he's like, oh yeah, he's healthy. He's going to play. He's out there for 5 minutes and he's limping back to the bench. And I'm like, yeah, he was not ready to play. So I think I would have to see it a bit for myself, like really prove to me that he's fully 100% back. Cause I mean, those just, the ACL is not something you mess with lightly, and it just feels weird that they're treating it as lightly as they are to this point.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, wrapping up this series on this end, I mean, Clippers are down 2-3 to the Suns. They are now going back to LA for game 6. In a big game for, if you're a Clippers fan, obviously it's a must-win game. If you're a Suns, I don't think you want to see a game 7. Because game 7s are where anything can happen. So I would consider this a must-win game for both teams. We'll see a crazy game tomorrow night, but I think we need to leave a decent amount of time to talk about the game tonight, the Injury Bowl, where Trae Young did not play. Giannis went out with an injury. The series is now tied 2-2 as the Hawks blow out the Milwaukee Bucks in a just explosive fashion.
Not close.
Without both superstars, but I will say the Bucks at least got Giannis for a half and still just got blown out of the water.
They were down 10 when he went down. Like they were down like 27, or they were down like in the 20s, and then they came back, and then he hyperextended the knee. So they were kind of coming back, but yeah, it's tough. Not having Trae Young and not having Giannis, it taints the series a little bit for me. It's just sad. Like it's fun watching all the role players step up. Like we're seeing big time plays from Kevin Huerter, and we're seeing Chris Middleton actually go and be. We're seeing Chris Middleton go and step up and kind of like be like kind of almost like the star of the Bucks down the late game stretches of these games. But this is one of the more fascinating conference finals I remember seeing.
Yeah, there's just so much to unpack here where, especially with the injuries. I mean, it's role player bowl. Mm-hmm. It's role player fest, right? I mean, a bunch of Robins running around doing their stuff. So it'll be game 5 will be so intriguing to me. In a series tied 2-2, I've been the biggest proponent of the biggest game in a 7-game series is game 4, because I think it's game 4.
Okay.
Because in a series that's 2-1, either a team wins and they go up 3-1, right? And at that point, the series is kind of deflated, or we're tied and we're all knotted up going into game 5, right? And the Hawks won their must-win game, in my opinion. Again, going down 3-1 is, I mean, last, playoffs, it's not all she wrote, but I mean, psyche-wise, it's a huge blow to go down 3-1 versus now we're knotted up. Right. Now we're tied up 2-2. Game 5 is huge. Now, I'm not belittling how big game 5 is going to be, but I'm trying to bring emphasis to how big this win was for the Hawks.
It's huge, and it can't be overstated in the fact that it was huge, and you saw a guy step up. But I do think I will agree with Mitch a little bit here, is that with these two stars being down, the series has definitely lost some watchability for me. If watchability is a word, but it's harder to watch these two teams without their two marquee players. I mean, you would think that if you just looked at the others, right, as Shaq affectionately calls everybody who's not a superstar on the team, the others,
If you're not,
you would have to say, you would have to say that the others, like, it swings in the favor of the Bucks just on paper, with Chris Middleton, with Drew Holiday, with I was gonna say who's been hitting down some key shots. PJ Tucker's been playing valuable minutes for that team. Brooke Lopez. I like Milwaukee's others more than I like Atlanta's others. That being said, they got blown out today. And I think that obviously that points to the value that Giannis brings to this team. But, you know, when other guys need to step up, you know, when you got to have that next man up mentality that everybody loves to say so much, the Bucks didn't get it done today. And do I think that's going to be the story for the rest of the series? Time will tell. But I do think that if they look anything like they did tonight for the rest of the series, it's going to be a quick one from here on out.
You know, it's funny that I agree that on paper, the Bucks others are certainly the superior team. But the thing that I have taken from this run that the Hawks are on is that I vastly underestimated all of the others for the Hawks.
Yeah, and they're fit.
Like, honestly, they lost Trae Young, but then they just bring in Lou Will, who doesn't do the same thing that Trae Young does, but effectively plays the same kind of style that Trae Young does. And then everyone else is still doing what they're doing. And everyone else just kind of steps up. And they got a lot of guys that are stepping up big time in these playoffs. Like, you just need one of Capella, John Collins, Danilo, Bogdanovich, Herter, Cam Reddish. You just need one of those. You need like maybe one or two of those guys to like step up. And any of those guys really can in a given night.
Yeah. And that's brings me to my point where if both these guys are out for a significant time, meaning Trae Young and Giannis, I don't know if I go with the Bucks over the Hawks' others. I take the home team. I think this is a series where the home team is going to having home court advantage when you're a team of others is huge, at least in my opinion, where I think home court is, especially now that you're getting fans back in the building, monumental in this series, which yes, favors the Bucks. But I mean, yeah, if Trae Young can come back and let's say Giannis is more hurt than we were alluding to, like it's still, I mean, it's a tied series. It's right. Still anybody's game. The Hawks will not go away. They won't. No. I kind of love it.
How could you not?
It's hard not to. I mean, and exactly what we were talking about earlier. Lou Will is that guy that you need. He's that guy. You're like, all right, get me a bucket from wherever. Go get me a bucket. The Bucks have that guy, a professional bucket getter. I'm saying the Bucks have their bucket getter in Chris Middleton. He can go and get you a bucket, 3-point mid-range, attack the basket. He can get you a bucket. It's going to come down to just whose shots are falling on any given night. And like Ethan said, home court is big, but it can also be flipped in the sense that, like, as a visiting team, there's nothing more satisfying than silencing a home crowd, and how big of a momentum shift that is to have a building go from rocking and, very loud, a tough environment to be, to you going on a little run. And all of a sudden, like Trae Young said, it's quiet as fuck in here, like it's a big deal. And it's anything can shift. It's going to be, in my opinion, a series of momentum swings, and whichever side that momentum ends up being on for the longest, when you take out your two key superstars, that's kind of what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, and basketball is a game of runs. That's just how it is, how it operates. And speaking of how things are and how they operate, we are coming down to the end of this podcast. A couple of seamless transitions here.
Oh, look at you.
That one was much better than your first one.
They should pay you to do this.
No one does. But that wraps up this podcast. Shout out to ASMR-Edison for joining us today. Again, comment a better name, but I'm trying.
You're rolling with it for now.
Until someone beats it. He is ASMR-Edison, a tall guy.
I like ASM-Edison more than ASMR-Edison. That one rolls a little bit more I like that one better.
You
said that one first.
We'll let the people decide.
All right, fair enough.
But Tall Guy, welcome back on another podcast. Margaritas, just in general.
It's a classic.
Just
a classic.
We're not thanking anybody.
It's something you can have in California and Texas, anywhere you're at, as long as you have tequila and mixes.
Good times.
And good times.
We're not even pretending to be snobby on this one. Just straight tequila and Marg mix.
This one went off the rails early.
Love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're just going to end off the rails. Well, cheers, everyone, and go have a margarita. Again, if you made it this far, you earned a margarita.
Pat yourself on the back.
Cheers.
Cheers.